Friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we will tell you about the largest defeat of the United States in the Indian Wars. But if we look at the percentage, it is the biggest defeat in US history, as the Indians managed to destroy a quarter of the entire American army. After gaining independence, there was another problem: the indigenous population of North America. Due to the territorial expansion of the colonists, there were constant minor clashes with the indigenous population. The Indians began to unite under the leadership of an experienced leader, a chief nicknamed Little Turtle. He fought on the side of the English during the struggle for the independence of the states and understood perfectly how to wage war against the colonists. Historians consider him the most outstanding leader in the entire history of confrontation. Little Turtle actively carried out raids, and this could not but worry the colonists. The boiling point was the creation of an Indian confederation from many tribes, which, by the way, were actively supplied by the English. The first campaign of the colonists in 1790 was unsuccessful. After several clashes, the troops had to retreat. The second campaign was led by Arthur St. Clair, who had fought against the English and was then the governor in the St. Clair army. There were 600 regular soldiers, 600 militiamen, and 800 mobilized recruits for 6 months. In total, there were about 2,000 people. The plan was simple: to move into Indian lands, gradually capturing settlements, which in the end should have pacified the locals. However, the Indians had other plans. During the march, small but daring raids were constantly carried out on St. Clair's army. Diseases spread among the troops, discipline fell, and the army began to rapidly decrease. Add to this the terrible supply, and you will not find anything surprising in the fact that out of 2,000 fighters, there were only a little over 1,000 left, most of whom were not properly trained and had a weak understanding of what was happening, while the Indians were more than motivated. Little Turtle received reinforcements from a leader named Blue Jacket. Their numbers exceeded St. Clair's army, and on November 3, 1791, the colonists stopped for a rest by the river. The situation was extremely tense, but the colonists did not bother to provide adequate security. In the morning of November 4th, the Indians suddenly surrounded the camp, and Little Turtle personally led the troops into battle. The militiamen immediately retreated. The regular soldiers hastily grabbed their guns and fired a volley, forcing the Indians to temporarily retreat. However, the Indians' tactic was to lure them in and surround the separate groups of fighters who had separated from the main forces. The colonists attempted to fight in close combat, but the warriors of Little Turtle evaded the attacks, wearing down the defenders' strength, and then, once again, surrounded the isolated squads. St. Clair rapidly lost control of the troops, but he deserves credit for trying to rally the forces. Chaos reigned in the camp, and the Indians prioritized killing officers and artillerymen, depriving the colonists of their main advantage. In the end, St. Clair managed to gather a small group of soldiers and officers around him and break through the encirclement. The general barely escaped with his life, along with only 47 people, 23 of whom were wounded. After a long pursuit, they managed to break away from the Indians and reach Fort Jefferson. It was a devastating defeat. 632 soldiers were killed, and around 200 civilians died on the battlefield. Over 200 wounded were left behind in the camp, cared for by the Indians. The Americans lost a quarter of their army. Only 21 fighters were killed, and 44 were wounded among Little Turtle's forces. The news angered Washington, and the general was sent into retirement, but the Indians were unable to capitalize fully on their success and reap the fruits of their victory.